The very bizarre game that is Overwatch 2 is finally in players' hands. It made waves, going straight to the top of Twitch, with of course a well-coordinated drop situation, then falling down to something a lot more normal. And now we've basically got to work out what the hell is going on with Overwatch 2. It's an extremely bizarre game in how it has been split up. It was obviously not intended to be split up when it was first announced. We've all got many big questions about the development of this title, and just why the hell Overwatch 1 was left just to languish for years with not really appropriate updates, while the rest of the competition, such as Valorant, well, just started pumping out content. It's been a strange time for Blizzard. Finally, though, people are actually playing it. So this all started off with being able to play it, getting beta access. That was all done through Twitch drops. Of course, just like with Valorant before it, engaging people to view a Twitch stream in order to get their beta key is a fantastic way of getting excellent numbers. However, just like very massive Steam numbers because of queues inflating things can make an MMO launch look a little bit bigger than it may be, well, so too can Twitch drops be a little bit deceiving. 1.5 million viewers. I mean, that sounds kind of incredible, right? I mean, how often do things get that many million viewers? But the thing is, a very small fraction of those viewers actually stayed. You had to watch a stream for a few hours to get access to your key, so the big question is, for the people who are interested in Overwatch 2, did they stick around? The answer is evidently no. Of course, that could be good for Blizzard, and they could actually be playing Overwatch 2. But we were going from a peak of just shy of 1.5 million to it now holding in the mid-20k range on Twitch, which in fairness is about double where it used to be, showing just how much Overwatch has fallen because, of course, it used to dominate the scene on Twitch. Now, that drop window lasted for 8 hours. You needed to watch 4 hours to get the beta access, and that is something that you very much do see in that data. It's hardly a surprise that there has been a drop, maybe a little bit of surprise of just how big that drop has been.
Yeah, this is where it'd be very nice to have obvious player numbers for Overwatch. Like, obviously, we're actually kind of spoiled every time we look at this kind of story for Steam, because we get to see, who's playing, how many people are playing, etc. But for Overwatch, obviously, that stuff's all obfuscated by Activision Blizzard. So we can go, okay, 1.5 million people wanted a beta key. That sounds interesting, but how many of that is like the big kind of boost you get at the start of free-to-play versus the kind of actual genuine interest in what Overwatch is?
Yeah, for a bit of analysis, I go to DJ Wheat's tweet actually on this. So he's been big in the esports scene for a long, long time, actually ex-employee of Twitch. Just saying, if you offer drops, give access to anticipated game, you likely will hit top 5, but the challenge is maintaining that spot post-release. And this is where it's kind of interesting, because Valorant is the last game to do this and actually stay in the top 5. Overwatch has been struggling in and around position 36 in the past year. And we actually take a look at the Valorant graph. Okay, so there's the Valorant graph. You see that it goes up to a 1.7 million. Now, that was during April 2020. And then, of course, it was actually able to maintain decently healthy. So one of the key data points we're going to be looking at is, how does this Valorant chart compare to Overwatch 2's?
Especially,
drop-off stick.
Yeah, especially when you look into a little bit of like how Overwatch initially was received from like the viewership angle and esports angle, where I think Overwatch is just a harder game to watch than Valorant, because obviously Valorant leans on like the CSGO stuff of, we kind of have this solved. We have this like, this is really readable, this is viewable, you can follow one player. But in Overwatch, it's a little bit more kind of, a little bit all over the place.
Yeah, Overwatch readability from a viewer's perspective is just not there. At least with Overwatch 1, they always had issues with just their tool set, how they actually presented the game in an esports fashion. It was very slick with as much money they could throw at it. It was just, what does the engine actually support? Valorant and CSGO just were way better in that regard. Yeah. So we haven't exactly seen that yet with Overwatch 2. Of course, I imagine that better viewing and spectating, that kind of thing, is going to be vital for the league, so probably will be there.
That's even why a lot of their game design stuff was kind of there, with the dropping the extra tank, dropping the extra player was literally just, there's now 2 less people in this game, so there's now a lot less spell effects. One of the major problems with Overwatch was double shield. Just, there were too many barriers, no one could hit anyone, so that's why they moved the tank, and that's cleaned up the visuals a little bit. But people have also said that like they're dropping a lot of the auditory overload of playing Overwatch, So you've got a lot more kind of only the important things you'll hear, and a lot of sounds are disabled by default, including sounds for like killing people and stuff like that. So it's interesting that I think a lot of people are suggesting that they've tried to push some of that onto the visual side with like updated kill feeds and scoreboards and stuff, and it is still just a very noisy game to watch.
Ultimately, when you have an action FPS with that quantity of abilities, I think you're always going to have that as a problem.
Indeed.
What is undoubtedly good news for Blizzard, though, is they did have that 1.5 million number. That does represent a lot of people actually wanting access to this game. That is good news. It also set a narrative into motion. As we can see, it got the headlines.
Mm-hmm.
So even the people who don't really follow Overwatch, they will casually see this. And if they're talking to their friends, they'll say, oh, did you hear? Overwatch did really well.
Mm-hmm.
That's the big narrative win for Blizzard. The big question, though, is what's the game like? Does it feel like Overwatch 2? Is this what players of the game want? And it's an interesting situation. I think Overwatch 2 is moving in a direction that I will actually enjoy quite a bit more than Overwatch 1. However, there are some people, especially playing support roles, maybe don't feel as well taken care of.
Yeah, it's very much the reverse of Heroes of the Storm. Where Heroes of the Storm was Blizzard attempted going into the MOBA thing. They're like, okay, well, it's all about the team comp. It's all about the teamwork. Individual player ability doesn't really matter super much. It is important where you are, but, you can't hard carry. You can't go in, play Illidan, and just kill the entire team repeatedly. It's all about how your team plays. And Overwatch was a little bit kind of like that initially, with the fact that it was all about team comp, all about how do we weave our ultimates together, how do we push forward as this team with 2 tanks to support 2 DPS, stuff like that. But now it's very much more, oh yeah, no, if you're like a really strong DPS, you can just annihilate the backline. No one can stop you, and then that can snowball into a win. And that's very much the case for tank players who are like, tanks are way more impactful than before, because basically one tank is now doing the role of 2 in a bunch of ways. They've got like a lot of extra kit and a lot of extra reworks to like work for that. But then that kind of has the impact on a lot of players of like, okay, so I liked that before because I could just contribute, but now the other side of like one really good player being able to hard carry and destroy a backline means that the backline has no answer to someone good coming in and be like, okay, yeah, if you're a support player, Genji is now your worst enemy and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's just a fundamental design change. It feels bad to them, but good to Genjis. And you're like, that's an interesting kind of place for them to end up.
That's the tricky thing. I enjoy FPS. I always have. And I enjoyed Overwatch 1 quite a bit. What I found frustrating, though, was just that feeling of almost being capped in what you could do.
Exactly.
Just different to a lot of the other FPSs I played where, yeah, you could kind of just with individual skill get more of a team wipe or something like that. So to me, it being faster paced with maybe a little bit more lethality and things like that, that is music to my ears. That is really countering the bit of Overwatch 1 that I didn't enjoy as much, which was kind of when things just slowed down, got very chunky, got very tanky, and especially when you had some of the metas that happened before they really made 2-2-2 be a thing. So it's quite interesting. A lot of the decisions seem pretty good to me. And when I look at the Overwatch community, I see an interesting situation. A lot of people who love Overwatch 1 maybe still love Overwatch 1, so those who didn't just take an extended break from the franchise, maybe more mixed opinions there. But it does seem like the very dedicated, you could almost say more esportsy type people, they seem to be quite happy with this.
Yeah, I think this is where a lot of the feedback came from, and this is a lot of where it's been designed now, where it's going, okay, well, what do like the competitive players of this want? And I think that's because that was like the loyal fan base of Overwatch 2, the ones who stuck around and played the competitive mode consistently. And I think that's where like a lot of the direction is just, okay, well, what makes it more fun for them? What makes it a better, I don't want to say esports game because I don't want to assume they're designing for esports, but what makes it a more competitive game in the way that, what makes League of Legends really good and sticky forever? What makes Valorant really good and sticky for people to play forever? Oh, it's that like individual element, it's that fast pace, it's this kind of design work, as opposed to the kind of, oh, well, we'll make this 4 groups of 5 and 6 like players to play together and have fun, which very much seems to have been like the initial design goals of Overwatch 1. And then it's kind of like, well, once, when the rubber hits the road, how do we need to change? And this is kind of where they've decided. And obviously that's for competitive people and for people who want that like ranked climb experience. But for people who want that kind of more casual, I guess Heroes of the Storm kind of vibe. But then we know where Heroes of the Storm went, and that had a very small audience. So it's hard to say if this is the right decision or not, I think only time will really tell. But I'm
Probably.
certainly, yeah.
I'm down for it in principle,
Yeah.
though it does seem like it needs to be polished up, especially supports having good answers to things.
Definitely. It's almost some of it's overreaction in a sense, because one of the things that was really frustrating for those individual players was so much hard CC. You have a McCree or Cassidy now, just there you go, flashbang, you're dead. Sorry about that. Or there's a Mei protecting the back line, oh you're frozen, you've nothing to do with that. But the other side of that is now the opposite, where it's like, okay, well there's now no CC to stop you, so you're allowed to have fun. But it's a PvP game, so your fun comes at the at the expense of other players, in a way.
Yeah, and through different types of games, this discussion has just went on and on.
Yeah.
Decent example of similar principles in an entirely different type of game is skill-based matchmaking, which is an ongoing discourse in your Call of Duties and a lot of other similar games. And as for the game itself, it's a bit weird. It is a bit weird because I hear Overwatch 2, you hear Overwatch 2, and you would think that means a hell of a lot. Well, thus far, we've got visual and audio changes. Generally speaking, I think some of the visual changes to the character models, I think they suffer a bit from sequelitis, where they just have to put some things on them to make them feel more complicated. So I'm not as much a fan of that, but overall the visual changes, things like that, they seem like upgrades. Audio seems like an upgrade. When we get to the content, though, this is where it's weird to me. So 4 new maps. A lot of people would expect more, and I think we can actually dive into some detail there and how there's a good and a bad thing. Now, there's old maps that are set at a different time of day, and then from your own gameplay, you were basically saying some of these old maps don't really feel great with the new 5v5 format.
Yeah, it's almost like what they were designed for versus what they kind of weren't designed for, where they were designed with kind of more free Overwatch in mind, and then the 6v6, the 222 kind of stuff developed. So they kind of felt like the 222 came out of what the maps worked best as, kind of naturally.
Yeah.
And now that's been hard changed and the maps haven't been updated. You're like, okay, well, it feels a little bit off compared to the new ones, because the new ones feel better, like way better for the new kind of gameplay, which is interesting. But it is also just like, I think it's interesting that they just changed the time of day on loads of them. And you're like, okay, this feels fresh, but it's still the same map. Interesting move.
Yeah, and I was thinking about the map quantity, and initially I thought, it's kind of disappointing, that's not that much. Then I thought about a lot of the games that I've played in the past, maybe a new Call of Duty game or whatever, and we keep on having situations in FPSs where there's really 3 or 4 maps that people actually like. Let's just say there's a map pool of 8. There's usually a few duds in there. I was thinking about this again and again and again, and then I thought, wow, I wonder what their content graveyard is. How many maps have they concepted and designed and just thought did not meet the cut? Because it's this weird thing. We're going to come into Overwatch 2, or just Overwatch in general, with expectations that we've got from the FPS genre, in terms of map counts and stuff like that. But aspects of its design are kind of borrowed from the MOBA genre, where typically you have a map. A map might have seasonal changes, but it's just that, it's a map. So I suppose with Overwatch, given the complexities of designing for a game like this, you can never really expect to have loads of maps. The hope is you get a reasonable quantity of extremely good maps, and I suppose the good news here is that the maps are pretty damn great.
Yeah, I mean, that was obviously going to be a problem when you have Hanzo climbing walls and Genji double jumping and dashing around the place. You always have like, okay, well, you can't, you have to now consider every single wall and every single corner way more than you would for, here's a group of, here's just an FPS, here's just a Call of Duty where, everyone can move the same way. Yeah. It's a lot kind of different in that sense.
In fairness to them, I would rarely ever have an Overwatch map or game mode where I think, oh, I don't want to play that. That's a dud map. I don't enjoy that. Very different from most FPS experiences I've had where there's often a few maps that are just horrible to me. So definitely props them in that one. The other good thing is the new game mode push. Very good feedback on that.
Yep, no, I have been, it's that thing where you say, you don't see a map and go, it's a bit of a dud. For me, I almost felt that way every time I loaded into something that wasn't push, just because push felt new and felt exciting and felt a bit different. It's like, okay, this is cool. The robot that pushes the payloads really animated nicely. This is a fun game mode. And I don't want to play the old stuff. I want to play the new stuff. And that's kind of what it felt like, but I think that's more a compliment for it than anything else.
Yeah. And then to some of the actual changes, well, it's a bit weird. So there are DPS changes that are a mixed bag.
Yep.
We've got one new hero in Sojourn. A lot of other heroes do have decently substantial reworks. But again, for a lot of people, They kind of think of the rate of heroes per year they got while Overwatch 1 was the main game. They then look at Overwatch 2 and they think, oh, so the new game's out, it only has one hero? Where's the heroes? I would almost wonder if they have more hero designs sitting in the bag, ready to have more successful live support for Overwatch 2 versus 1.
I would certainly hope so, because, coming in and going, okay, well, oh, there's one new hero in Overwatch 2? Well, that feels a bit kind of pants in a way. It's just, it doesn't feel like, hey, it's a new game. It just feels like, oh, I feel like I've logged into like Overwatch 1.12, 1.13, 1.14, something like that instead.
Yeah, the way that you described it to me, I thought was perfect and will really resonate with people. It doesn't feel like logging into Overwatch 2. It feels like logging back into a free-to-play live service game after 2 years. Yeah. Where it doesn't feel like a 2, but it does feel like there's been a lot of tweaking, changes, and some new content.
Yeah, it's like I would definitely expect the same feeling if I logged into League of Legends or logged into, I guess, Heroes of the Storm, or even sometimes, like, you log into Hearthstone, and you're like, oh, there's a bunch of new game modes. Oh, interesting, cool. It gives you the pop-ups for like, oh, here's Wild, here's all the card changes. Like, okay, fair. This is a lot more of what it feels like, of just, this is an Overwatch, like, light expansion, or they've been developing it for a year and a half, and I haven't logged in. A lot more of that feel, which does leave you to wonder then why was Overwatch not getting updates for the entire time, when it would have been a smoother experience if this was just an updated live service over time.
Yeah, that's what's weird. I think of Overwatch 2 as ultimately the future of Overwatch, but then they look at designing for 222 with the Overwatch 1 maps and meta and all of that. Any work they do, they then just have to redo, which would probably be quite hard. So it leads us to the strange situation now where we've got the Overwatch 2 beta. There's even things like the UI and the scoreboard are evidently beta that feel quite weird to people. And a situation where for those of us who play a lot of these games very in depth, right, in like the MOBA shooter world, we can see all these differences and stuff like that. But to your casual fan, and one of the things that was so strong about Overwatch was that it did appeal to that super broad base of people. They kind of look at Overwatch 2 and they're like, oh, kind of looks like Overwatch 1, feels like Overwatch 1. What's this? Because, of course, the thing that puts the 2 in Overwatch 2, for most people, is the big PvE component. And that's what brings us on to Blizzard's problem here. This is positioned as Overwatch 2, but they had to split the PvP and the PvE. The PvP still carries the Overwatch 2 name and the expectations that come with Overwatch 2, even though it seems like really the bulk of the 2 in Overwatch 2 is the PvE, which is the bit we're going to be charged for at some point in time in the future. But even in the comments that I've seen, there's loads of people who don't know that Overwatch 2 PvP is a free update.
Yeah, I mean...
Because they feel like it's a 2, so it's got to have a box price, but that's not the case. So, in a way, there's 2 Overwatch 2s. There's Overwatch 2 free-to-play, which is just the PvP, and then Overwatch 2 PvE, which is pay-to-play. That's quite weird.
Yeah, and to people who, the big audience that touched Overwatch 1 and then didn't pay any attention again, they're not going to really see Overwatch 2 in the headlines and go, okay, well, this is maybe like... oh, this isn't Overwatch 2, this is like a not fully Overwatch 2. They're just going to see Overwatch 2. Oh, 1.5 million viewers. Oh, beta launch. I'll watch that. Oh, there's nothing new. Okay. Well, that's Overwatch 2 is now forever anchored in all of those users' heads as a bit of an upgrade on Overwatch 1, as opposed to something transformational. And that's why I think like them timing this now, but also timing it with a marketing push and a big wave of Blizzard's back, baby, we've got this, Overwatch 2 is coming. It's kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul in a way. Where they're like, hey, we've got the big excitement now, but we've actually maybe really hurt our prospects of Overwatch 2 being what we needed Overwatch 2 to actually be. And I think that's really kind of interesting how their positioning has potentially shot themselves here.
Yeah, I think it's just a lot of consumer confusion in a way. And I know that might sound weird to viewers. I think if you listen to this channel, the show, you'll kind of know things about games. But even I threw the question out on my Twitter yesterday. And it's all World of Warcraft people. So it's the Blizzard gamers generally tend to follow me on Twitter.
Yeah, you'd expect them to know, right?
Loads of them thought that this was going to be a paid product. They just were not aware. They were confused. And I think it's left people in a situation where they think the 2.5 years has led to this. Almost certainly not the case. 2.5 years for a limited subsection of the Overwatch 2 team has led to this. The rest of it we don't know about. And that's, I guess, the thing. I think that they could have got around this if they just tried to hedge their bets just a little bit more. I think they should have done some sort of unveil or revealing or something like that event for Overwatch 2 PvE, or at the very least did a decent push saying, hello, this is what we're doing, here's what you should expect. It's all well and good for people to know that these two things are split up, but I think what they need to understand is that 2.5 years really has went to something that's going to feel really big and new and transformative. And as much as you could just say, okay, how about you think back to the BlizzCon when they did that? Well, ultimately, that was quite a while ago. The plans for this game have changed since then. I think Blizzard just needs to fully update people on what PvE is going to look and feel like, kind of what they can expect, and those aspects of the business model. They need to do that in a way that really gets the word out there, and because they didn't do that preemptively, it means that all of the hype that came from this 1.5 million, that is going into the Overwatch 2 PvP beta message, and not this overall is the picture with Overwatch 2, now you understand, so you can have faith in the team and the development process.
Yeah,
that's the issue.
They fundamentally, I think, they have this problem where their marketing hasn't really... They've almost like the whole thing of, reality versus your personal reality versus the actual facts of things. Like, okay, well, the actual facts is this isn't Overwatch 2, but everyone who sees this is going to know, well, as far as I understand, that's Overwatch 2. And that's like something their marketing clearly has struggled with substantially. They just haven't basically thought about that aspect whatsoever.
Yeah.
I think they might be fine to just kind of repeat this in like a year or so and go, hey, it's Overwatch 2 again, here's the beta, look at all the PvE stuff we added. That might work okay, but it is about, will they be able to get will they be able to fire a second Overwatch 2 bullet, or have they kind of spent themselves on this 1.5 million concurrent? Because that's pretty big. I mean, Valorant was also big, the first big new game from League of Legends creators, and it was 1.7. So it's like, that's actually a fairly massive explosion. It's just a matter of, can they explode twice?
Yeah, that's pretty much it. So where I'm left is a funny situation where this is strange about this game. This does look like an Overwatch 2 that I personally would enjoy more than where parts of Overwatch 1 went. So I'm actually quite excited by that.
Yeah.
I hope there's no loot boxes and the issues like that. I hope they find a good way for that to feel quite satisfying. And perhaps we just need to make a paid course. We'll charge $999 for it, and it will be called Audience Expectation Management for Video Game Marketers.
Let's do it.
And we'll become trillionaires because they all seem to get this one little bit of positioning just a bit wrong. I think it's all down to perspective. I think if you're purely thinking about the dedicated Overwatch 2 community, this is probably all doing a really good job of serving them.
Oh, it is, yeah.
But I think it's just reaching a little bit of confusion as it goes past that. Ultimately, though, assuming they get the support situation right, I think they could be onto a winner. A game that is at least better for players like me, probably more healthy for that competitive scene, which, I mean, even for a game like Valorant, like, that's a very important thing. So it does help. Just seems like there's a few little road bumps.
Yeah, I feel like if Overwatch 2 is going to be the win that Blizzard wanted to be, they will have to earn it, like, at overtime. They will not earn it by releasing Overwatch 2, which is like, as far as we know with, like, Bobby's interference in Overwatch and stuff like that, it's very much, it seems like they wanted the Overwatch 2 because they wanted another box product, they wanted another Overwatch as opposed to Overwatch but still doing well. And I feel like they will have to change their attitude there once this releases and go, okay, now we support. Now, this is our Valorant that got a big launch, and we continue it.
I think that is 100% their plan. You mentioned Bobby interfering. That was from Tracy Kennedy, who was a producer on Overwatch, worked with Jeff and that kind of thing. From what I also understand, there was aspects of the Overwatch League kind of being thrust upon the team that were quite frustrating for the development process. So I think a world where perhaps Microsoft is more calling the shots. Some of these things are a bit different. There's different leadership at Blizzard. It all could go better. And yeah, I hope it goes well. I really do. I want Overwatch to be back. It was a really cool time when we were all playing Overwatch together. It was sad that the game just sort of petered out. So I'm all here for a return of Overwatch and Blizzard stuff. Let's just hope they have the goods.
Yeah, for all of my frustration with support stuff being, largely unchanged, because I tend to play support, sometimes a little bit of DPS. Every hero I touched for the first while was unchanged. It's like, where's the heroes with the changes? I want to play the ones I want, but they're like weaker now by comparison, and they don't have, some of them don't have cool stuff like Maze Freeze. But it was like just shooting a load of people as Ana, throwing the biotic grenade thing. I was like, yeah, you know what? Overwatch was actually very good, and this is definitely a better version.
Yeah, you remember just how fucking incredible Overwatch felt back then.
Yep.
They can totally recapture that. So let's hope they do. Might be a bit of a bumpy road. We'll see how their messaging goes. Till then, though, let us know what your experience has been in the game, and we'll see you next time.